So let's just dig in here. Tell us what grade you're in, how you're doing in the midst of this pandemic. Are you in school, doing remote school? Tell me a little bit about what's been going on these last, really, it's this past year.
Oh, well, it's definitely been a new normal, or what I like to call, and I actually was telling my mom this yesterday, I believe, or the other day, and I was saying that this is the brief normal.
Mm.
And so it's been kind of a crazy year, definitely different. I'm currently doing school virtually, so my interaction is with these boxes right now. And so that I guess that's my life now.
Yeah. Are you able to, you said you're 12 years old, right?
Mhm.
Are you able to, as a 12-year-old, find fun moments these days or still interact with your friends? Are you still able to do things even though it seems like most of it is right here on Zoom?
Yeah, actually, now I've FaceTime or video chat with them more often now rather than seeing them more. I usually, yeah, I do it on a platform, and that's nice. It's super nice to catch up on them or during the weekends or friends maybe I haven't talked to that much, and sometimes it's nice hearing from them, and we tell each other about our lives, and so it's I guess the normal or the brief normal is doing everything on the phone. Some of my friends, we really meet, or the only our only interaction or the only way we interact now is that we meet, but it's still fun. I still have fun moments at home. So I wouldn't say it's like one of those this pandemic luckily hasn't been one of those things that have sucked all the happiness away. I think there's still happy moments, happy days. Even today, it's a beautiful and sunny day, and I was lucky enough to do my school outside to change the environment, and that was fun.
That is absolutely phenomenal. I know it's slowly but surely starting to get better as far as the weather is concerned here in New York City. So I am so excited, Yolanda, to talk to you because, as you know, we are celebrating Women's History Month and we are talking to the granddaughters of so many trailblazers in our history. And when we talk about trailblazers, your grandmother is certainly one of them. There's so much going on right now. It's certainly hard enough for adults to handle it. So surely for children, I know you've continued to speak out. It's almost like you've, picked up the torch, if you will. Are you inspired at times in part by the work of your grandmother?
Yes, I'm happy to see she did a lot, and what most people don't know and they don't acknowledge it as much is that she was involved in a lot of activism, and she was more than just she was a human rights activist. So that didn't mean just racial equality, but she yes, she worked on that, but she worked on rights for the LGBTQ community. She worked on women's rights. And I think that that's so important to acknowledge that she tried everything. And even when people told her or advised her, you shouldn't be involved in a movement or you shouldn't be involved in this so many times, and she still decided to take action. Or even just the fact that all this is so inspiration, even the fact that she was the one that actually made the King Holiday a day. Even the people that worked with her, it took her years, over 10 years, I want to say, like in 1970, I believe, that's when she started working on that. She founded the King Center and created the King Center. And even in times, what's amazing is when the people, her peers, the people with her, advised her, oh, this isn't going to happen, she persevered and still, and many times she actually succeeded, and she did succeed in that. And I think it's so important to acknowledge her, not just as a wife or the widow of Martin Luther King.
I love it, which is why I'm so happy we're talking about her today. It is very clear to me that even though you never had a chance to meet her, that your mom and your dad and your family members have certainly taught you about her. You clearly, there's a part of her in you. When do you first remember learning or starting to understand that you were part of a family that frankly changed history? Like, when did it, because when we're little and we're toddlers, we're just living, if you will. When did it start to sink in that, wait a minute, something is a little different for us?
Well, my whole life, I would say, my parents always told me you're in a unique position. They always told me, they always taught me that, even probably when I couldn't talk back and say, yeah, I guess we are.
Mm.
And so they always told me my whole life. And I didn't really interact with that for a few years, or I heard it. It wasn't until I was 9, probably, that I kind of started to realize more of the significance of my family. 9, 10, probably later than what a lot of people may think. When I really started to marinate, like what my grandfather did was phenomenal. And even now, you could still learn new things. So every day or not, or every event or every new interview that I hear from my grandmother. A few weeks ago, we were actually listening to an interview that she did. And so my parents have always played that around the house since I was little. My grandparent excerpts from my grandparents, either speeches or interviews that they thought were uplifting. And so I've always listened to that. But even just listening to some of the stories, or just reading, even over the summer, I read John Lewis's March, and even just reading that and just listening to like what all these people went through, or just even as I get older, my parents being able to tell me, and me being more not even interactive, but being more understanding it more, because I'm as I mature, we get older. And so that's when I was just like, this what my grandparents did was significant. I guess one day it just kind of hit me, if you would. It just kind of snapped.
And was it, in addition to your parents, is it one of those things where people, wherever you go, or people were like, oh, do you know about your grandparents? I mean, was it constant that way? Or, because in many ways, I don't want to call you a celebrity by any means, but for sometimes when children have parents or grandparents in the spotlight, it seems like anytime they meet someone, that often is what people want to talk about.
Yeah, so as people, and as I was younger, they'd be like, oh, or I've always heard stories about them. Sometimes stories that my parents haven't even heard, or they would tell us stories, and I guess as a kid I'd just be like, or I'm still a kid now, but when I was younger, I guess maybe 7 or 9 even, and I'd be like, oh, that's a good story. And I guess I guess part of me I think self-consciously I knew that I was in a unique position, and always had that feeling inside of me. It just didn't really, I guess it just one day clicked to me. So hearing those stories, I guess, were kind of normal, as well. Like, oh, or even my namesake, like, oh, I know your namesake, we went to school together. Even people that were in there every day, people we may not know, or we run into, and they knew them, or they were classmates, so they were involved in their everyday life. Or even maybe people that were involved in the movement, and they had the opportunity to meet my grandfather. And so um I guess it's kind of normal hearing those stories as well.
We know George Floyd. I was reading about this and I didn't realize that George Floyd was killed on May 25th, 2020, which happened to be your 12th birthday. When that happened on your birthday, and when you eventually learned what happened to him, what went through your mind?
So actually, someone sent me a text, and they were like, "This is insane," and it was like this exclamation point. It was actually a club that it was this club called Bay, and it stands for Blacks Are Equal, and we developed it, me and a couple of friends, and some other, and we asked other classmates and some of our other friends to join us, created a club after we heard what was happening to Nathaniel Woods, and so that's when we really started to create that club. And so we were, I guess, sending each other, not I guess, but we were sending each other videos or just keeping in posts. And so that video, I guess, went viral all over social media. And so someone texted to us, like to our group chat, and was like, "This is insane!" Exclamation point. So I was like, huh, like what's going on? So I click on the video, and I see the video, and it was very sad. And so after that, I went downstairs and told my parents. I think they'd just gotten off a work call, and I told them, like, look at this video. And they were like, yeah, we saw that on the news. So usually I don't miss, yeah, we saw that on the news. And usually I don't miss that. And I don't know if I discovered right away if that was on May 25th. And while that was happening, while the actual moment, I was having a Zoom birthday party. And so I didn't even know what was going on until someone sent me. And I just went upstairs after my parents, after we saw it again, and after they were explaining to me more what happened, I began, and I don't even think I finished the whole thing, actually. And when I went downstairs, I'm like, Mom, look at this. This is crazy. Mom, Dad. And I go upstairs and I begin to cry. And yeah, it was, I was upset. I was angry. And then that's when my parents, they kind of helped me or nurtured me back into a more not even understanding, but a more calming state by using the philosophies of my grandparents, because I'm sure there were times when they felt very frustrated as well, and so that's how I'd felt. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that. What do you make of, after all these years and everything that your grandfather and your grandmother went through and pushed for and fought for, that now here we are, you and I, talking about something that just happened not too long ago? What do you make of that?
It's kind of unfortunately, and as I've gotten older, I've started to discover this, and honestly, it's not too surprising. I mean, in some ways, it's surprising to see that video in 2020, but when you think about the kind of, if I say after the civil rights, I believe that there was a time when we were dormant for a good 20, 30 years, really. I mean, I think there were times when people did mention it, maybe after the 70s, and there's a time when we were kind of dormant for a while. And I think what's so significant about what happened to George Floyd is that my grandfather, and I believe it was in his last book that he wrote in 1967, was "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" And so in that book, or in one of his, in his last book, I believe he mentions how we are how we will go through the phase, and they were in a phase, and a certain phase then, and he said the next phase will be genuine equality. And so I guess then people were like, I think they thought, oh wow, that's powerful, but now it's like really starting to like marinate, like, and I think it's been lost for so long, or too long, and now it's coming back to us. And so I think that's what makes these events significant, and what makes this so big, and especially since I believe that the start of George Floyd was when we entered the gates of genuine equality.
Do you think then, are you optimistic that in your lifetime, in my lifetime, that we'll see equality?
I'm hoping so, yes. You know, with what we're seeing now, what we've done, all our accomplishment and all our wins, we need to be consistent with these. And if we keep seeing a pattern of a consistent basis, I think yes, and I want to say yes as well. Um,
That's amazing. I want to pivot just for a moment. I want to make sure I have the right moment. You mentioned this, but I'm not sure if it was the first. Tell me about the first speech you delivered. Was that the one about your grandmother? Was that your very first speech, or what do you remember?
yes. So I actually, that's one of the things when I was four that or that's one of the things I remember well when I was four. And so um, I walked up to the stage. I was backstage. I was, well, in all my speeches, and most people are like, oh, we can't tell at all. I look, I feel like I'm terrified, or I feel terrified. And, many times I'm shaking or my teeth start to shake. But when I talk, most people are like, you don't look nervous at all. And so when I was four, I think I probably did look more nervous. And so I go up to the stage, and I guess there are all these cameras there. Even looking at the video, I see all these like white flashes or all these flashes. And so I'm like, huh, and I can tell you exactly what I said. So in my squeaky 4-year-old voice, I say, hi, my name is Yolanda Renee King. And Coretta Scott King is my grandmother, and she said to be our best selves. Happy birthday, Coretta Scott King. And the funny part was that, well, you could see the video, and I'm like, hi, my name is Yolanda. And I kind of say it like a bit. And then after that, I see my dad kind of leading me to the stage a little further, more to like the middle, because I was still kind of from the back because I guess I was very nervous. And so I go, and then as I was talking, for part of the speech, my mic or like the microphone I had wasn't exactly right. It was kind of under me. So if my hand was maybe here, then it went down. So you couldn't even hear me too well for a second. So yeah, and then I just remember hearing these claps.
That is so awesome. And if I were to ask you what you think was one of your grandmother's most significant contributions, what would you say that would be?
Her trait, I would say, is perseverance. Also, another thing, she had patience as well. And this was throughout the whole, this was throughout maybe a few, this was maybe not in 1 year, but it was a few years. She worked on this project for over 10 years, but throughout those years, she met with every member of the United States Congress at the time, even people who she knew wouldn't necessarily agree with her. And she met with like a lot of people in the Senate as well.
That is so important to hear, especially nowadays when people are so divided. I get a little emotional just sitting here talking with you because I remember when I was in elementary school, I can't remember what grade I was in. And I remember hearing my mom on the phone, and she was so upset. And I didn't know what was going on. And she came into the room and she told me and my sister that she was pulling us out of school in protest for one day on Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday because it needed to be a holiday. I'll never forget it. And that morning we woke up and she was like, we are not going to school. And we weren't the only kids who didn't go to school that day. And it was the first and only time I can think of in my childhood where my mom took a stand like that, where, since education obviously is key, but for us to stay home. And because I come from a family of educators, she's a teacher. I recognize that by her pulling us out that day, that is how important so many people in communities like mine all around the country felt that we had that day to honor Dr. King. So it's so special then now that I'm talking to their only grandchild. Of all the stories that have been told to you about Coretta Scott King, what stands out the most for you?
So one of the stories that actually a lot of times I like hearing stories as she was as a kid, and you can go back to your interviews and find them as well. But there is one what is one well one story being that she met with all the members of the Congress, and one being, most people saw my grandmother, and this is as a really, you know, as a how do I say it? As a really kind of elegant person,
Mm.
um,
Kind of
really
stoic.
nice. And so as when she was little, actually, growing up, and she even said this in her interviews, she was a tomboy. And it wasn't until her teens where I guess she started becoming more elegant. Another thing that I found interesting and is that most people think, oh, well, and I mentioned this a few times because I think that it is so important to acknowledge my grandmother as not just the widow or not just correct or not just Martin Luther King's wife. Like many people don't understand the work or what she did. And I think that's so important to acknowledge that. And what was actually interesting is that she was actually, this was before the civil rights, when they were in college, probably in the 40s, I'd say, or something, where while she was in college, she was actually in a movement, a college student movement. I think it was called the Peace Movement. It was called the Peace Movement. And so what many people in my family have told me is that she was the one that actually brought my grandfather into the movement, and she was in it more, in some ways, involved in it more longer than he was, and so she brought him in, and so yeah.
That's amazing. So fast forward to you, take me back to last August. And I watched you go that March for Our Lives rally in 2018 that you mentioned. You were, like you said, everybody says, oh my gosh, you're so confident. I watched that video of you confidently speaking. And I couldn't help but wonder, Yolanda, what you were thinking when you looked out at that sea of people. I mean, was it just faces for as far as your eye could see? I mean, people had, as you know, these days, they have their cell phones out. For so many people, it was their first time hearing you speak. I mean, take me back to that moment. What was that like for you?
So I knew that since it was a rally, I knew there were going to be people there, but I didn't know it was going to be over 800,000 people. The people in the March for Our Lives were actually talking about, or the people that were helping organize, or some of, I guess, they were talking about how many miles they had to walk to get to the end of the crowd. And so I knew there was going to be, I thought, well, maybe it'll be like a good, maybe it'd be 100 people or 200, maybe not 200, but I still felt very, very nervous. So I had to be on like a game mode. And so I was on that mode all day. And so I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be like, I knew it was going to be like a lot of people. But then I remember being backstage. We were backstage. Everybody was backstage. And I remember just being in the back of the stage, at the back of the platform, and looking, kind of sneaking my head, not really even sneaking, but just peeking through this fabric that was on the stage. It wasn't even like a curtain. Maybe it was. I didn't have to like look like this to check to see, but like I was looking, and I guess I could only see like in this view, but I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's a lot of people. And so I just remember seeing that, like, and I think I was even kind of like thinking in my head, like, Mom didn't tell me it was going to be this many people, or my parents didn't tell me that, or Dad didn't tell me there was going to be this many people. They didn't tell me that. And so they were surprised as well. And they'll tell you that they were surprised as well. So, and I guess everybody was surprised. And it was great to see that that many people showed up and that many people were that passionate. And at the same time, it was horrifying. Well, I was nervous. And so, I was going on stage. My legs were shaking again. And doing my teeth. My teeth were chattering. My hands were probably pretty sweaty as well. And I was just like shaking. And
but you nailed it. You
yes,
nailed it.
I took a deep breath like my mom told me to do, and I spoke. And so a story that my mom actually tells a lot is that, so she again was like, okay, well, since we know this is last moment, but because we were originally going there too because we wanted to support the movement, so we were going there as I guess as people there in the audience, or as people participating in the rally, and or participants, because I think they have an important role as well. And not just, we were going to support the movement. And so we found it important. So that day, for many kids, it was some kids didn't go to school that day to go there to even to watch it as a participant or as an activist as well, because you have to remember, people in those audiences are activists. So I don't consider just an advocate, oh, you have to be an excellent advocate to be an activist. And again, I was like, Mom, I think I have it. And so as we were getting ready for the march, I told her what I was going to say, and she'll just tell you that like 4 or 5 hours later, I said that exact thing, and she said that was just such a special moment to her.
Wow. Wow. How did you feel after you finished? You nailed it. People applauded. People were talking about it. It was so powerful. It was such an energizing moment. How did you feel after?
I was like, oh, I did. I was like, oh, I did it. And I just remember, like, even backstage, or like everybody was high-fiving me, and yeah, giving me a high five. And they were like, you did a great job. And my parents, like, everybody was just very, very happy. And so I thought, okay, this is a success. And then I didn't till a few days, because I guess I didn't know that so many people were going to watch this. I didn't know not just how big it was there, but how big it was globally as well, or even globally.
Sure.
And so as I was walking on the plane, I saw these people. They're like, nice speech. And even when I like came from school that day, or when I went to school the next day, and I walked into my classroom, my classmates clapped for me. So that was just a nice moment.
That's so cool. So then do you call yourself an activist?
Yes, I do, because I think you can be an advocate, but you can be an artist. You can start a club at school. There are so many ways to be an activist. And so I don't think there's just one right way to be one.
Well, when you think about, there's so many causes, and so many issues that need attention. You talk about health disparities, you talk about police brutality, equal pay, climate change, mental health and wellness, education, gun reform. There's so many things that you could, look at, if you will, and focus on. What are you passionate about?
Well, I would say there's about 3 things that I feel passionate about. Number one being, and the first 2 we've talked about this whole conversation, and so the first 2. So number 1 would be, of course, racial injustices, just all criminal justice, to the systemic racism in this country. Mm-hmm. And then number 2 would be the gun violence going on, and what's going on in our schools. And just even in our communities. And that kind of relates to racial justice as well. Racial injustices as well. If you look at what happened to, even if you looked at what happened to Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, or the people that were, and so many more, Michael Brown, all these people that were shot. And so that also, I guess, or not, that also goes in the category of gun violence as well, I believe. And so the second and the third one I would say is poverty.
Mm.
So, I haven't talked about this too much, but we're in one of the wealthiest nations, if not the wealthiest nation, and still there's so many people that don't even know when they're going to have their next meal, and it's just sad.
It's sad. I'm sure there are special keepsakes that you have from your grandmother. And is there one that you have that is a favorite? I heard you have a favorite photograph.
Yes.
Can
Well,
I see it?
wait, it's not with me actually.
Oh, you don't have it?
Uh-uh.
We'll get video of it later. Tell me about the photograph. What is it about it that you love?
Okay, so it's a photograph when she was in between the ages of 11 to 13. And
Mm.
so it was a photograph of her. And so what's so interesting about it is that we look like and even as a grown up, but especially in that photo and just as a child, we looked like a lot alike. And so it's just cool to see like the resemblance and of that photo. And it was a photo of her as a kid, and I haven't seen that many photos of her as a kid. I've seen her as a grown woman, of course. So I think that's one of the few pictures they have as her as a kid my age, or yeah.
That is so cool. Since you were never able to meet her, what does it feel like to see a picture of her as a kid and to see that she looks so much like you?
That she was a person too. She was a child too. And even as she got old, as an adult, and as a kid and as a college student, she was an activist. She was a mom. She was a wife, and she was as well. I don't think they called it that then, but a tween, or going on to a teenager, or yeah, and so, and it's just so interesting to see, because I hear stories about her. I would say, hear more stories about my grandfather as a child than I do about her as a child. So it's just good to see. And even the pictures that we have, I've seen maybe more pictures of my grandfather, or I definitely know more stories about him than I did about her. So it's just great to see story and to hear stories about her, and to hear, and especially from like a girl to like a girl. So
Now you are 12. I'm sitting here looking at you and I'm like, I have two 8-year-olds and an 11-year-old, and you are just blowing my mind with your brilliance, my friend. And now, you've got the big 1-3 coming up in May. How do you hope to celebrate becoming a tween yourself? Actually, no, it won't be a tween then. You'll be a teenager.
well, I'm planning to spend time with my family, and I'm planning to celebrate. I don't know how the situation will be then, because I really would hope, and I've really wanted to, even especially before COVID, to celebrate my big 1-3 with a bunch of friends, and like physically. And so I don't, we're gonna play it by ear. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. So I hope that I know it's gonna work out. And so I'm just really excited to be 13. So.
I love it. I only have 2 more questions. I can't even imagine how proud your family must be of you. What is the balance for those what do you want us to know when you are, the only granddaughter of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King? You're in such a powerful place, but you're also you're your own beautiful young woman. What is the balance? I mean, is it one of those things where your friends, they know the legacy, but then you're just Yolanda Renee to them, or, what is the balance for you?
So my friends actually, well, they call me nicknames as well. They have their own nicknames, and I guess it's just Yolanda. I guess they just see me as Yolanda to them, especially since they didn't know my namesake either. So, and I guess they know me as Yolanda. And so, yeah, they usually tend to act like friends, like 12-year-olds. And so sometimes I feel like I'm like this person that has sometimes two lives, maybe, like, you know, the life at school, the life at friends, and then I have the life where, like this. And so, and I think like the life where I'm talking to you right now is the life that most people usually see.
I wondered about that. And when you look in the mirror, I mean, it's undeniable. You look like your dad, your mom, your grandpa, your grandma. When you look in the mirror, do you see all of those folks staring back at you?
It really depends. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I look like my. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I look like Yolanda today. So, or when I say Yolanda, as in Yolanda Renee, which is myself. Or sometimes I look like my dad, or sometimes I look like my mom, or sometimes I look like. It really just depends. Mostly though, when I make certain facials, or my parents usually catch it more. Like there's one face in particular that I make about that I make, and usually it's unconscious, so I don't even know when I'm doing it. Like if I tried, they'll be like, no, that's not it. So and so it's like a, and we actually have this picture in our house where my grandmother is making this face where I can't, because it won't even be accurate if I did do it now, but it would be something like where she's looking at the, well, it's like a side shot, and it's you'll have to see the picture. Hopefully we can get a picture of that.
Yes,
But
yes. And so they see, sometimes you'll make that unknowingly and they'll say, oh, there's your grandmother.
yes, they're like, you just made a face of your grandmother, and sometimes it's usually not like 5 minutes. It'll usually last for like 2 seconds. So it's like, oh, we see that, and usually I don't catch it. There may be some pictures where I make a certain face, and so that's what makes it interesting. Because I'm like, oh, is it like this, or is it like this facial? And I try to kind of mimic it, and then they're like, no, 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 that's not how it was.
I believe that. Well, my last two questions. One, I look at pictures of my grandparents on both sides, my maternal grandparents and my paternal grandparents. And I feel like sometimes they were trailblazers in their own right. And I almost feel like I'm standing on their shoulders and they're in me and they give me strength, even when they're not with me at the time. But whenever I go places, I think of them and it gives me strength. Is it that way for you too? Do you feel like they're in you?
Yes, and so actually, a few days ago, before this dream, where my it was a dream with my grandmother, and so she was coming to, and she was basically telling me, "You're fulfilling." So I was hugging her, and she was hugging me, and she was whispering in my ear, or whispering to me, "You're fulfilling the legacy. You're keep on going." And all this uplifting stuff, and I remember, and I was crying, and then when I wake up, my face feels wet
You're
as
going
if
to
like,
make me cry right now. Oh my goodness. And it's interesting because people say that sometimes when they close their eyes and they dream, they feel like they, can have conversations. And I think you probably know this, but you know that you are making them proud, right?
mm-hmm.
My last question, you can only be you. What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I want people to know, and I've said this about my grandmother, about how she had different roles, and so I want them to know I'm a student, I'm a future teenager, and I'm a daughter, I'm a niece, I'm a granddaughter, and so I'm a friend. So I'm all of that, just like how they are, and so I want people to know that as well.
And what would you, if I were to, look in a crystal ball and see what your future is like, what would you like your future to look like? Do you know yet?
As in like what career I would do.
Yeah, career and just how things will be. Let's do both.
Well, I want to be, of course, continue this work as well. And maybe even now I'm focusing on school, so I'm juggling a few things. So once I finish all my schools, I can focus on this like almost as a full-time job,
Mm.
or full-time. And so I want to keep doing this work. And I also want to be a lawyer and help speak up. And so, yeah.
Ooh, well, thank you so much. You have been I'm speechless. You're so wonderful. Where's your dad's face? Let me see him. Dad, come around here. I am about to cry. I am blown away. Like, come around here. I'm blown away. I think I'm gonna cry. I really am. Like, it is, you are so talented. I hope you know how brilliant you are. Let me see your eyeballs, Dad. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Do you hear this, girl?
We're very proud. We're very blessed. And
what are you feeding her? I need to go.
I think what happens is sometimes they skip a generation, and I've done the best I can, but we were blessed to be able to produce an outstanding young lady that we're so proud of. And
how are you not like crying all over the place?
Proud every day.
You are bright. You are beautiful. You are God's child. Girl, you are just, I cannot wait to see where life takes you. You are phenomenal. I know everybody's telling you that, but you really, really are. Good job, Mom and Dad.
Thank you. Bless you all. Thank you so much.
God bless, guys.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.